2 losses, and VP 1 win, 2 draws, 1 loss.
Yeah.
I personally think, like Hot Six, they've played better than what their points say, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And going into this game, it's hard for me to put VP as a clear favorite based on the play both teams have shown. For Hot Six, of course, it's kind of do or die time at this point if they want to look at the top 4. They have to win this series 2-0, and they probably have to get at least another 2-0 and a draw to have a shot at that. As for VP, it's not do or die time, but with a win here, they have almost secured top 4 as well. They would be on 8 points should they win this. So definitely a very, very important game for both teams. Realistically, probably a draw, where I think Hot Six is going to catch them a bit off guard, and then the other game, VP will probably just beat them on being on paper the stronger team.
I would actually say that Virtus.pro would actually take this one 2-0. In terms of like saying logically, I think Virtus.pro should be able to take a 2-0 against Hot Six. I do agree, though, that Hot Six have been kind of showing good plays. Even the games where they lost, they sometimes still had an advantage early in the game, and then they just either they choked or something went amiss, and then the later game they seemed to struggle a bit more than the mid to early game. And I think if you're thinking about Virtus.pro, even if you're thinking a couple of months back, Virtus.pro was the team that had the longest game. If it comes to late game, they'll be able to win the game out, and they'll be able to play it out and make as little mistakes as possible. And I think that Virtus.pro, because of that, should be able to 2-0 Hot Six.
Winter, what about you? Especially because we thought in the VP Empire match, VP had a slight edge just given Empire's performance the previous days, but then Empire came back. The Empire stroked back, and then we have VP going down 0-2. That was their first loss. Where do you see that coming into play? I mean, do you think it was just slip up? Obviously, those two teams know each other very well. Maybe that was a factor?
Yeah, I think knowing your opponents very well is definitely a huge plus. And going back to MVP as well, like VP versus MVP matchup, I think MVP in the games that they lost, they definitely showed that there were a lot of potential, a lot of strengths in their game. And just looking back at the EG series, the first game, they lost because EG had a fantastic team fight when they were defending their base. It showed to me inexperience. Hot Six were leading in the game. They had a lash. They were supposed to just push the high ground with just a lash alone on the high ground. Instead, they were having, for some reason, 3 heroes on the high ground, and the combo came, and they all died. And the second game, they sort of had a draft that didn't really. It wasn't bad play, you know. It was just it was so difficult to win with the lineup they had. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't say they played badly or anything, even though they lost 2 series. It's just a matter of whether they sought their heroes are, I think, more or less better this time around, and decision making, you know, don't repeat the same mistakes. And I definitely think that they have potential to at least take 1 game off VP.
Okay. I know you were pretty excited when we saw that they picked Huskar earlier this week. Do you think we'll see that again any point soon by Hot Six? Because that's something, I mean, sure, people know about it, but if it's a niche pick, right, you don't really expect it in your game until it happens.
Yeah, I think, yet again, it comes back to the fact that the hero is for me, it's very similar to Techie. It's a strong hero, but it's better when the environment allows it. It's a situational pick, and it has to have a certain element. For example, Huskar, you need to be fighting a lot of spell damage, then the hero is worth a pick. Otherwise, if you pick it into like multiple sources of physical damage, then the hero doesn't feel the same, because you have to play him as most likely a position 1 farming hero. Then you must make it worth it.
And that particular game also was, of course, Forev into a Timbersaw, and they didn't succeed with that game. They actually ended up losing that against Vici at that point.
I mean, he got a BKB just to deal with that. And usually, you don't want to deal.
Exactly.
You don't want to get BKB on Huskar because it contradicts the hero's concept. He has a lot of magic resistance, so being forced into going into a BKB that game, really, it's not something what you want as Huskar. But he has to do it because Timbersaw, everything he does is pure damage.
Yeah. Well, speaking of niche picks and whatnot, you were bringing up kind of similar to Techies. So far, Techies taking TI5 by storm. Shiver, how do you feel about that? I know the other 3 guys, they haven't been a huge fan. I'm personally a big fan because I don't have to play against it.
This is a big factor, actually. This is a gigantic factor of liking Techies or not. For me, it's very hit and miss. We saw Techies played by Complexity yesterday in a game, and Complexity played it like a bit of a fighting Techies, like he was everywhere, and he was able to just be there and just, you know, play his mines. And it was funny, of course, seeing people run over the mines. And we've seen Secret sometimes doing the same as Kuroki playing an aggressive Techies. But I feel sometimes the Techies is just a bit too passive and just a bit then I just don't like it that much. But if it's a fighting techies, I'm all for it because that one is fun to watch for sure.
Is that second game between those two teams still going on right now?
No, it's over.
Okay,
So,
I didn't get to see the very end
So
of it.
Secret just played their game 2 against Complexity, and in game 1, Secret picked Techies and won with
Right.
it. Game 2, Complexity first face pick Tusk Techies.
Right, I remember that.
They lost.
Okay.
And Secret
The dream
actually
is dead.
Secret had a really interesting way of dealing with it. So I didn't really watch the game that closely. I just saw the picks. And a pick Secret pulled out in that game that they haven't used before this whole tournament. They picked Treant. And I think
Okay.
the main reason they got it was that a Treant with a gem can just use Nature's Guise and just scout the whole area and secure it for the team with very minimal risk of getting ganked himself. So it's probably that plus the combination of having living armor actually mitigate a lot of the damage from mines and team fights and whatnot and sustaining. But that was a pretty intelligent way of dealing with it. And that's the problem you face when you pick Techie's first phase. You give the enemy team so much time to prepare and so much flexibility in how you want to counter it. That's as Winter said, it's a situational third, fourth, maybe fifth pick. A bit too early for my taste.
I mean, do you think for Complexity it was a bit of a kind of their ego got stung a little bit when Secret pulled the techies against them too? Because I mean, both teams go in probably knowing, right? It's been the buzz of TF5 like, oh wow, Complexity picked it and won, but then Secret picked it and won too.
100% win rate. We should just grab it.
Yeah.
Right,
And
just
by
go
the
with
way,
it.
Can't lose.
By the way, there was another thing from that game that I talked to Ben about, and Ben was just like, okay, sorry, yeah, the old Ben,
Right, the old.
So I talked to Ben about it, and so they also picked, they gave away Brood, and Complexity's response to the Brood pick, it was a fifth. I think Ben said it was a fifth pick Brood, so they had to pick Legion Commander to try to deal with it. And Brood is also extremely good against techies. You have Spiderlings to just scout out the mines, and generally they just covered the entire map with between their Brood and their Treant. They can scout everything out. And supposedly the Brood was actually played mid in that game. Now I didn't see it,
Yeah,
I
it
didn't
was
see
mid.
it either.
It was mid.
but
So-
that is
Yeah.
extremely rare to put the Brood mid, and it worked really well.
We
for
do
them.
it in the old days, specifically against like the mid hero that doesn't have spells to clear creep wave like Invoker. We do Brood mid against that. It's just a good example.
But what was his matchup?
Yeah, but I think they switched the lanes. It wasn't the Legion at the start, and he just came over after. I can't remember the heroes because I didn't catch the game, the whole
Right.
game as well.
Yeah, of course, that was on a different stream. But just something interesting to note, like you said, I mean, it was 100% win rate. Dream is dead,
Not
everyone.
anymore.
Techie's no longer 100% win rate. No point in picking him anymore. We'll just rest that right there for the rest of TI5. As you guys saw on the screen right behind us, the next match is coming up on mainstream. Of course, we are waiting for VP versus MVP Hot 6, and then actually both MVP teams now playing a match. MVP Phoenix will be playing up against IG, and Team Empire playing against Newbie. Let's talk about Newbie a little bit. As Shiver, we were just saying, Newbie definitely also a team that has, I mean, pleasantly or not, surprised people in their results. How do you view their results so far?
Well, to be honest, my expectations were kind of low on one side because I know last year TI Newbie wasn't really a team people, or at least I wasn't really looking towards seeing at the top three. And during the group stages, they didn't really do too well. They actually almost got knocked out last year. And then all of a sudden they ended up winning the whole thing. So even though I am not really expecting too much of Newbie, I'm still, in the back of my mind is still, they did this last year too. They could still come out and they could still end up taking the whole thing, who knows. They're actually doing better than I was expecting though. They are quite stable in their performance, which is nice to see for them.
This year they don't have Xiao 8 though.
Right, I was just about
And
to bring that up.
I think he was, we're talking him up a lot, and I think it's with good reason, though. Like, you don't win a championship like this without being a major part of the success.
Yeah.
After his departure from Newbie, it was just a steady decline. It seemed like they were lacking his guidance and his understanding and leadership for the team. It seems like they've got it a bit more together for this, but the question is, how hard is it going to hit when the really important matches kick in and they don't have their old captain who led them? I personally have also been impressed by them, but realistically, getting a very high placement for them, I think, is probably out of reach. But top 8 is a possibility.
Okay. Winter, I mean, in that case, then would you just say that, sure, their execution is still there, they're able to pull the games off once they get in, but what part of Xiao 8 do you think they're missing the most?
I think having a general concept of the plan, having a plan, because in the past few months when we were watching, like especially DAC, we were talking about the team seems like a headless horse. They're just running around like no clear leader, and it seems like even in some of the games they were arguing because you could tell some guy is like just standing there and he just died because probably he's talking to his teammate, and a lot of things like this happen in the game. So it's a huge sign that the team isn't there's no leader and everyone is everywhere.
You know, I love talking to Winter because anything he says, it always just sounds so nice. Generally, if I say something, well, they just generally don't have a plan. It sounds so mean. But the Winter's like, well, I think generally they don't have a plan. It's like, okay, that's all right. That's just a minor point going into TI5. Not a big deal. They'll be able to fix that as we go to the bracket stage.
They're running around like a headless horse. Oh, that sounds kind of cute.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, I can see that. It's comical. No big deal. But Newbie, the important thing here, though, we're talking about results, but why the results matter is that they've had some of their harder matchups, right? We bring that up every time.
Yeah.
Is that they've had their harder matches done and they drew in them. So they got 1 point each in them. Now, in the statistically easier matchups, if they get 2-0s, they could move into the top 4 of Group B and maybe continue to cruise through so that they can at least secure that top 8 finish at TI. As we're waiting, Shiver, something else I've been asking these guys, I want to get your thoughts on it. Do you think we'll have a player or team that's a 2-time TI champion this year?
I think the chances, like in terms of players, I think the chance is pretty high, actually. I mean, IG is not looking really hot right now, but I'm thinking, who knows? Because it's still IG, and there's still, the players, the names are there, the star power is there, and I'm still thinking, when it comes down to best of threes, perhaps they can pull it together and actually make it through. And of course, Secret's doing really well as well. So I think there is a chance, yeah, for sure. Maybe a top 3. Let's put it that way.
We counted 6 teams yesterday, right?
Right, with at least one player.
With at
Yeah,
least
so
one
player. I mean,
in that case,
numerically,
there's
the
a pretty good
probability is
There's
high,
a very good
And
chance in that
what were the
case.
teams again? Navi, IG,
Here we
LGD,
Secret,
Newbie.
Newbie, and
Who's
wait,
the last one?
how
We're
am I
always
counting?
missing one. Yeah. That's
I actually got to
interesting
6 with mentioning 5 teams, I think.
We always miss one, and we always miss a different one each time too.
Did you say IG?
Yes.
IG.
IG.
Okay, so Navi, IG,
Secret.
Newbie, Secret, LGD.
someone's eluding us.
Yeah, someone is eluding us hard.
Oh, maybe there is only 5.
Maybe we just miscounted the other day.
there was the 6th team.
This is
We'll
why
come
we
up
don't do
with
math.
a-
Vici Gaming have How.
Yeah,
Vichy
that's
Gaming.
right.
Six.
Yeah,
Okay.
And between those teams, you have VG and Secret, at least, that are top contenders, and LGD. In my opinion, those 3
Yeah.
teams all have a really good chance of winning. So, realistically, if you wanna look at it from the opposite perspective, what's the chance that we don't get a returning champion player this year? I think EG will be the most likely team to win this year that do not currently have a champion. Apart from that, it's who would be next in line.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
if Empire actually shows up,
I was a
late,
really
man.
big Empire believer, but I am starting to get really skeptical.
yeah, but things are starting to get better.
They did.
now.
They did 2-0
Yeah.
Virtus Pro earlier today.
They
or
2-0
yesterday.
Virtus
Right,
Pro.
but
I don't know which one it was.
that's like a unique matchup within that group, right? Like
Yeah.
they're from the same region, they know each other pretty well.
Maybe that's what they needed, though.
They 2-0'd VP, but then they got 2-0'd afterwards. I can't remember which team it
Oh,
was.
they lost.
They lost the
Yeah.
next
Series.
series. So
Okay, I take that.
they're
Yeah, we don't want to speak too soon.
they're a big maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if their gears are to kick in, like it's gonna be a long climb because already it's been 3 days now, 2.5 days, and if it's just kicking in now, sure, this chance is still there, as we've been mentioning. No one gets knocked out of the group stage, but it's gonna be a pretty tough climb, especially if you're in the very bottom side of that lower bracket. I mean, you start with a best of 1, you don't get to choose your opponent. Even just one map, that could be just the end of your TI run right there.
I guess another team that that have been on the rise at least since yesterday,
Cloud9?
or 2 days ago, Cloud9, right?
That's true.
Cloud9 are starting to look pretty hot, and they didn't just win their last 2 games. Like they completely ran over IG.
The
Like that
first
wasn't
team-
even remotely close.
First team
So-
to ever not let IG get a kill ever in the history of Dota 2. Never been done before in the
wow.
history of Dota 2. Confirmed.
That's that's
is
pretty
crazy.
convincing.
Yes.
That is
Now IG have been on the other side of that coin. They 22-0'd